Hello there everybody, Scotia here, and welcome to the 5th review for the 5th chapter of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9, the JoJoLands. And it's honestly kind of crazy to think that we're already on 5 chapters. Like, I know 5 chapters in the grand scheme of things doesn't really mean much because we just have so many fights and arcs and chapters and volumes and years ahead of us with the JoJoLands. But I don't know, to me it really just feels like it's gone quick, like even though, like I said, we're only 5 chapters in. So, you know, it's just weird. It's part of my kind of like process of getting used to these monthly chapters. The wait has honestly not been that bad. Like, I'm quite pleasantly surprised. Like I'm quite grateful that, you know, the wait between chapters hasn't been as bad as I thought it was. Like, I was really kind of dreading it, and you're talking to people who had already, you know, had caught up during Steel Ball Run or JoJolian, who were like, oh yeah, the wait for months and chapters is brutal, blah blah blah. And I think the benefit has definitely come from like starting to read this monthly, like from the start of a part. If I'd like jumped in halfway through JoJolian or Steel Ball Run or, you know, the JoJoLands, like if we were 20 chapters into the JoJoLands and I'd started reading it, I definitely think it would have been rough to kind of like, you know, go from having all these chapters in bulk at my disposal and then getting to a point midway through an arc or a chapter, you know, or a certain story part and just be like, oh no, now I've got to wait a month. But yeah, so chapter 5 already, so with all that waffling out of the way, I might as well just get started right into it. So yeah, without further ado, this is chapter 5, November Rain, so let's get into it. So we start the chapter pretty much right off where we left off at the end of chapter 4, where Dragona is face to face with Rohan after Rohan has used Heaven's Door to pretty much just completely knock out Paco and Usagi. And Rohan absolutely has the upper hand here, and Dragona has tried to make off with the diamond, but a weird phenomena is going on with the diamond where the diamond is seemingly just dropping out of Dragona's grasp, and she's just unable to keep hold of it. So yeah, like we ended the last chapter off with Rohan pretty much on top. He, for all intents and purposes, had defeated Dragona and the others. So it's very interesting going into this, and obviously like a little bit of time has passed by, like a couple minutes maybe, because Rohan has already started tying up Paco and Usagi with the bindings that Dragona and the others were going to use on Rohan, which is, you know, like a nice little kind of like, you know, throwing it back at them, like, oh, like, and I think Rohan even mentions like, oh, like you brought these, you know, bindings, but you're going to use them on me, but now they're being used on you. And it's really cool here. I think they do a really good job of like selling how like intense and honestly like kind of like terrifying Rohan can be when he's not on your side, because like we only really got one fight with Rohan in part 4 where, you know, he was against the main crew, but the thing with part 4 in general was that like that had such a kind of like everyday kind of theme to it and vibe, where it was like, it was never really like life threatening. It was just Rohan was basically using these incredibly strong powers, but for very selfish reasons that ultimately, like, you know, obviously you didn't want to be in that position. Like Koichi and the others, you know, were losing their memories and parts of them, and like, and in some ways like losing weight, I think, at one point. So, you know, like it was very much something that they needed to get back, but like the purpose for it, like Rohan wasn't trying to, you know, just completely destroy these people and, you know, render them utterly defeated and helpless. He was just doing it for his own gain. So like in that sense, like Rohan, you know, he was powerful, but he wasn't that big of a threat. Like, and he was, you know, dealt with rather not easily, but, you know, like once he was dealt with, that was it. But no, like now this time it's like we're actually really seeing Rohan as a threat. Like, this is what Rohan is like when he's not on your side, and it's honestly terrifying. And like just his attitude, and like obviously like he's still Rohan here when he's confronting Dragona and all that, but like it's honestly just being on the other side of that is like just a really good job by Araki here, kind of like doing like not really changing Rohan in any way, but simply just flipping the perspective. It just completely changes the way Rohan feels and like the way he's perceived, the way, yeah, it's just very intimidating, very powerful character, very powerful person that like when his motives aren't so selfish, like, whoa, like you're in trouble. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. So now Rohan is voicing his intent that he's going to bind Dragona the same way that he's bound Paco and Usagi. He basically starts walking towards it, and Dragona is just freaking out. Like I was just saying, just how terrifying it is to now be just in the hands of this guy with just this immense power that just easily, you know, took out 2 of the, you know, allies. But then Dragona tries to like make off with the diamonds, that, you know, is just being really weird. And Rohan himself is even saying it would actually be easier if you just gave up and let me, you know, bind you so that the police can come and get you, because he's called the police by this point. But Dragona tries to make off with the diamond anyway, but as they try and run away, you hear like this like gunk sound, and somehow the diamond has like ended up in a cup next to Rohan, and Rohan just picks it back up. And yeah, just very like bizarre stuff going on with this diamond, and like, but Rohan seems to, you know, fully understand the power of this diamond, and he says something along the lines of like, that they've returned to me because, you know, not long after this he finds the money that Paco stole, which I think was from like a previous chapter, like either chapter 3 or chapter 4. But Rohan is like, oh, you know, this money has returned to me because the money from Paco kind of like just flies out of his back pocket. And like, so things are basically like that Rohan, you know, sort of owns are coming back to him, and like this just freaks Dragona out even more. They're just like, what the hell is wrong with you? And Rohan in his typical form is like, I should be asking you that, you're the ones that broke in here. Yeah, it's just really good mystery and intrigue going on, and like obviously Rohan once again is like, I'm going to like bind you now with this, you know, with this rope or whatever. But as he's about to, you know, bind Dragona and, you know, defeat them, and obviously include them in the defeated pile next to Paco and Usagi, and November Rain uses his powers to create a rainstorm behind Rohan, and then it, like, as suddenly as it comes, like the rain stops and Rohan looks around. So Rohan, you know, begins investigating deeper into like, you know, where was the rain coming from, who, like, where's the stand user. He knows it's a stand, he knows it's an attack, and he's trying to find them. And then this I thought was brilliant, because as Rohan like investigates the, you know, the part of the carpet where the rain hit it, he suddenly realizes too late, that the weight of raindrops has actually like increased the weight on it, and basically Rohan just goes straight through the floor. Like the raindrops actually like weaken to the structure of the floor, and Rohan just goes crashing through it, through the carpet, and immediately is just caught and, you know, bound by Jodio and quickly, you know, tied up. And yeah, Jodio just like completely defeats Rohan, like for all intents and purposes, like up till now. Obviously, you know, we never know, like Rohan could appear in the next chapter, you know, back and like all back. I doubt it though, but just judging by the conversations at the end of this chapter. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, like Rohan's done here, like he's been fully defeated, which is, I wouldn't say it's disappointing, but it's definitely unexpected. I was not expecting Rohan to be done so quickly, so kind of effortlessly. Like Jodio absolutely like had him here, like, and it was more like not pure chance, but like just the power of like Rohan's more inquisitive and investigative nature, like just did him in here. And like it's cool and it makes sense, but like, man, I definitely did not expect Rohan to kind of like go out so soon. And, you know, I definitely thought we were going to spend at least another 2 chapters like dealing with Rohan before we eventually start getting to the cats, you know, which I'll get to in a minute. But yeah, Jodio just has completely defeated Rohan. Rohan is helpless now, and I'll spoil it now, I guess, but like Rohan doesn't untie himself by the end of this chapter, like he's fully done. So then Jodio finally confronts Rohan, and there's kind of like this really just, it's honestly cute in a way where like Jodio's just like, he's doing the cool badass JoJo pose after defeating Rohan, and he's like, sup, like hello, because obviously he's such a fan of Rohan, he's such a mark for him that he's still, it's that mixture of like, I'm a badass, you know, thief and lookout, but I'm also like this kid who's just a fan of the guy I'm trying to rob, which is just such a JoJo like conundrum and situation to be in, where you're like robbing an idol of yours. It's so funny. But as you know, this has happened and Rohan is defeated, now Paco and Usagi get up, and they're like pissed off that they got beaten like pretty easily by Rohan, so they want to like beat the shit out of Rohan as payback. But Jodio stops them and is like, no, like I don't want you to beat this guy up, because he's like, I'm a fan of his, like I respect this guy, and like me meeting this guy that I respect so much, like it's a good day, and I don't want that, you know, I don't want this good day ruined. And Jodio honestly has like a really interesting speech here, and to me this is like such a prototypical like late JoJo Araki type like monologue here. Like I feel like I've seen a lot of this stuff in like part 7 and part 8, where like the JoJo has this kind of like monologue, which is good, like I'm not saying this is bad, but like just the way it's spoken, it's like just saying things that like I feel like probably wouldn't be said, at least by like normal people. But then again, when is JoJo normal? But you know, as Jodio keeps talking and like basically asks Rohan like, hey, like just like call the police again and tell them to not bother coming, like Rohan keeps refusing, which is, I think, is a good nod to the iconic scene from part 4 during the Highway Star arc of part 4. But yes, so basically Rohan's like staying his ground, but then I love how much he sort of like changes up and becomes, because like up until this point, like Rohan is still very much in control, even though he's done and he's tied up and he's done now. Just the way, like, even though Jodio's like saying all these things and is going on about like, oh, you know, we still won, we still had a great day, like we're still gonna get out of here, we've got, you know, we won, we're gonna get back on the flight and go home, blah blah blah. But Rohan still feels like he's in control, like he's still like no, I'm not like the cops going to be here any moment, I'm not going to tell them to go away. He knows who they all are, like he says to them, like, you're Dragona Joestar, you're Paco Laborantes, you're Usagi Aloha Oe, you're Jodio Joestar, you're 15, you know, like he still has the upper hand here, it feels like. But then as soon as Jodio pulls out Rohan's phone and is like, oh hey, by the way, like while you were all distracted inside, I went around the back and I found the room with all the lava rocks, and like I know why you were really here. Like you were here for the lava rocks, you were here for the volcanoes. And then as soon as that gets brought up, Rohan like just immediately like just switches up, and like I love this panel here where like just this sweat drop just appears and Rohan is just like, oh shit, and just that switch up of like just this one moment where like as soon as Jodio says like, no, he didn't come here for the diamond, like he came here for the volcano, for the lava, he came here to research them. And it's like you just get this really good feeling, like just it's really conveyed well that like Rohan knows the jig is up. He knows, like, these three idiots, like Dragona, Paco, and Usagi, like, they were here for the diamond, but this kid, like, he knows what he's talking about. And just that switch up, I think, was really well done. And just, like, this is the moment where, like, I was just saying, like, Rohan still felt like he was in control. This is the moment where, like, it just completely flips. And now Jodio's in control, and Rohan, as at his beck and call, and has basically, you know, he has no, like, secret hand or anything like that. Like, Rohan is done. Like, he is fully just lost, basically. But speaking of the rocks and the volcano and all that, my prediction that I said in a couple of other chapters previously, and like this isn't me saying like, oh, I got this one perfectly spot on, like this was a common, I think, theory that a lot of people had at the time, was that when Dragona and the others found the when they found the diamond in the safe, there was some volcanic rock in the safe at the same time, and obviously they completely ignored that and just took the diamond. And I said at the time, like, oh, I feel like the most important thing that, you know, out of those two items, the more important one is the volcanic rock, and Jodio pretty much confirms that here. So I was right about that, but like I said, like that, I feel like that was a very common thing that a lot of people had already guessed was going to be the case. But as soon as Jodio pulls out the volcanic rock, Rohan again just completely just like, he's so just in shock and everything. Like you can tell he was just so unprepared for one of these people to just catch on that quickly, that like, oh no, like the diamond might not even be a distraction, like the diamond, you know, but the diamond was not the important thing here. Yeah, it's a $6 million diamond, but clearly what link these rocks, these lava rocks, have with, you know, whatever's going on is clearly the more valuable thing here. Which I think is great. I think that's such an awesome kind of, like, not even a twist, because like I said, it was, you know, it was fairly obvious, but just a simple, like, kind of like shift in narrative of, like, you know, the diamond has been the focus since pretty much the first chapter, and like now the diamond is irrelevant. It will probably come up again and be relevant again, but like for now it's like the diamond is gone now. Like the diamond arc, I guess, of the JoJoLands is over now. Now we're in the volcanic rock arc, and I feel like this is going to be the one that, you know, lasts for quite a while for this part. But Jodio once again just shows how much he's in control of the whole situation, because he tells Rohan, like, we're going to be going now, and we're going to get on the plane and we're going to go home, but like if anything happens to us at any point during our trip, even if it has nothing to do with you, even if we get hit by a typhoon on the way back, like what if we don't get home, like I'm destroying this rock. And you know, he proves he's serious because he destroys one of the two lava rocks with Rohan's phone, and for the first time Rohan goes absolutely ballistic and just loses his mind. And like this is the first time in this entire part that like Rohan, like we see Rohan just completely lose his mind and just starts screaming at Jodio, like, are you insane? You, like, you know, just goes absolutely apeshit. And like it even like freaks out the others, like, you know, as you can see on the panel now, like Dragona and Paco and Usagi are all like, damn, like this guy just went apeshit. But Jodio's still cocky, still in control. It's just like, hey, there's still a piece left, but you know that like I'm serious. Like if we don't get home, like this other piece is going, and then nobody gets anything. And at that point, like, they won, and Jodio and the others start leaving, and, you know, Rohan is just like, damn, I lost. But at the same time, as he's going, like, as the others are leaving, you know, Rohan calls Jodio back and is like, you know, I'm ashamed and infuriated that I lost to a bunch of punks like you, but at the same time, like, Jodio, like, you interest me, like, you need to know this. And then we get probably one of the most, you know, interesting conversations that I think is definitely going to mean a lot later on in the part, where Rohan basically... he pretty much spells it out that like this rock is going to be a part of the mechanism that later allows Jodio to get what he wants, which is, you know, to be filthy rich. Going back to the first chapter where Jodio talked in depth about the mechanisms of the world and how all of these things, work in a certain way that allow people, and if you know how to work these mechanisms, you can exploit it to get whatever you want. And obviously this rock is going to be the mechanism that allows Jodio to get, filthy rich, which is at the moment the entire premise of this part. So in some ways you could kind of say that this might be the prologue, this might be the end of the prologue. This might be the end, this is the intro. I was these first 5 chapters might just be the intro to the JoJoLands, and you could argue that obviously we'll see how it goes, but depending on how it goes, chapter 6 onwards might be we're finally actually into the actual premise and the plot of what the JoJoLands is going to be. I kind of don't think so. I still feel like there's a lot more questions we don't know yet, in terms of what the rock actually is, why people want this rock. Obviously we'll find that out, but I think at the very least, kind of the setting up phase of this part has been pretty much finished now, if not very close to finishing, which is very interesting and obviously very exciting. But basically Rohan tells Jodio basically you take care of that rock and you'll win. Basically you'll get, you'll use the mechanisms to get what you want, fortune will be yours. But he was also said you gotta protect it because people are going to be going, it basically says people are going to be going after you for this. You're currently in possession of a very important item. And then basically as Jodio, tries to get at least, some info from Rohan, and Rohan says, no, I'm not, basically I'm tough, I've told you all I'm going to tell you. Rohan basically says to Jodio before he goes, and this is a very interesting part, he says, oh, by the way, I hope you realize, those people you're with, Dragona, Paco, and Usagi, don't trust them, don't tell them anything of this, because, they will betray you. There's a very good chance they will betray you. And very interesting, because I feel a lot of people have felt from the start that, someone in this group is going to betray Jodio, and it's very interesting, wondering who it's going to be. At first I thought it was probably going to be Paco, but now I'm kind of leaning towards Usagi. But at the same time, I could very well see it being a massive twist, and Dragona is the one that ends up betraying Jodio, which would be very heartbreaking. I'm already such a fan of Jodio and Dragona, and I wouldn't want them to become enemies at any point or something like that, but we'll have to just see how it goes. But yeah, it's a very interesting thing to kind of throw out there, hey, there's a very good chance these people, I would not trust them, they could easily betray you at any point. And it's kind of Rohan's parting words, and he does say that we'll probably meet again. So although this is probably the last we'll see of Rohan for a while, we'll at least probably see him come back later on in the part, which is nice. It would be good to see him again. I definitely, while I'm happy with how his role has played out here, and the surprise of him showing up, I do feel there's probably a bit more room to get some more of Rohan, but yeah, I'm kind of good with this being his last appearance for a while. I hope, once this chapter's done with, and we've gone on and we've moved on now, I hope we do get a bit of a break from him, because it's nice, and like I said, it was nice to see him again and get that shock and surprise of what the hell, the Japanese tourist was Rohan. But the same, if we are, if this is past the point of, the prologue or the intro that sets up everything, I think, Rohan's last words here are pretty much the great, conclusion to that prologue. We don't really, we don't really need anyone else from, any other parts, really, to kind of, help, establish stuff and set the stuff up and, introduce some stuff. I feel Rohan's done his job well. And yeah, basically just going in circles, I guess. And then we get to the finale of the chapter as Jodio and the others are running out of Rohan's mansion. The police are, starting to show up, and they're all planning to get out of here. And there's a bit of a line here where Paco shows the diamonds to Dragona, because Paco took it, because Dragona, I think, was just too creeped out with what happened to really hold it. And so Paco's oh, hey, I've got the diamond right here, there's no problem, I picked it up, no problem, I don't know what was wrong with you. But as they all leave, we see the cat that was following them throughout the last couple chapters, and also the one that straight up attacked them and almost, cut off Paco's foot in Dragona's hand, it appears. But it's not just one cat, it's not just 2 cats, it's 3 cats. There's actually 3 cats, and it's very interesting now, because for the most part they seem pretty identical. I was looking at their faces, but they all kind of have a sort of diamonds-ish shape on their faces, so I was wondering if there was a little different thing about them, if I went back to previous chapters and see which cat was which. But no, they all pretty much look identical. But basically the last shot of the chapter is the 3 cats appearing and chasing Dragona, Jodio, Paco, and Usagi as the 4 flee into the woods outside of Rohan's mansion to eventually escape and get back to their home on the island. And that's where it ends, and the final word we get here is the cats begin their chase. So, you know, I was saying that, like, oh, the stuff with Rohan was probably, like, the first, like, fight or the first arc of this part. I disagree now. I'm going back on that. I definitely think everything, basically, I think these first 5 chapters have been the intro. I think these have been the prologue, and I think this upcoming stuff that's going to be happening in the next couple of chapters with these cats, I feel like this is going to be the first real fight. And it'd be interesting if, like, this is the stand, or if these are the stand users, like these 3 cats. For some reason, Araki just seems really, you know, dedicated to showing, you know, the buttholes of these cats. Like, even in other chapters, like this final shot is like the buttholes of these 3 cats are very prominent. So I'm actually kind of wondering if, like, this translucent wire that, you know, was attacking the others in the previous chapter, I kind of wonder if it's going to be revealed in, you know, the next chapter that, like, they formed this string by basically shitting it out. If that's the case, then that's fucking hilarious. You know, I can't wait to see that if that is the case. But yeah, for now, I think that, you know, that's pretty much it. That's the end of the chapter. And yeah, chapter 5's done. And as far as I think how it's going to go, I think this is pretty much the prologue. So yeah, just kind of go into some closing thoughts now. So chapter 5 is done, and you know, as far as my kind of like guesses and predictions go, I think this is the end of the prologue or the introduction of JoJo Part 9, which I said, you know, I've said previously just now. So yeah, with that all said, like, I just think this part so far is so good. Like, I'm literally, like, there's not been a single chapter yet where I've been like, oh, you know, this is dragged, or this is, you know, this has not been great, or I've not been into this. Like, everything they've done so far has just been great. Like, Araki's just... It's, you know, I think in some ways a lot of what Part 9 is doing feels like it's kind of like in direct opposition to some of the complaints against Part 8, because Part 8 did not have the best pacing a lot of the time. You would be around in in one location for months. I actually looked it up, like what was JoJoLian doing 5 chapters in, and it was chapter 5 of JoJoLian was I think it was the second to last chapter of the soft and wet arc, which is the one where Josuke fought Ojiro in Fun. And I don't hate that arc. Like, it's not my favorite. Like, it's not my favorite arc in Part 8, not even close. I'd say it's probably one of my least favorite ones. It's not bad, but like, to me, that arc really dragged for me for some reason. Like, I either both times I've read JoJoLian twice now, and like it definitely didn't feel as long the second time. I think because obviously I knew like the specific points of like, oh, it's like by this point we're getting close to the end, whereas for the first time I had no idea when it was going to end, outside of like the names of the chapters. But like a lot of that chapter like just kind of takes place in like 1 or 2 rooms, whereas like a very similar situation, honestly. Like this first, you know, 5 chapters in, like we've ended this part with Rohan. But like the stuff with Rohan was like spread across multiple rooms with multiple people. Like sometimes we'd go to Jodio in the pool, then we'd go to Dragona and the others, you know, in the different parts of the mansion, and Rohan would show up, and Rohan was moving about the mansion, and the cat was moving about the mansion. Just a lot of movement and, you know, stuff going about, and a lot more players in play, which was great, and I really enjoyed it. And, you know, but then you get like, you know, the stuff with Ojiro and Fun, you know, like 5 chapters in to, you know, Part 8. And like, it's really only moving between 2 rooms. Josuke is pretty much the only major player involved. You have the other girl who's, you know, in the bath, but she doesn't really do much. You know, and it's just kind of like, neither is bad. I can see some people preferring the fun fight, you know, versus this stuff. I think this stuff in Part 9 is like already, you know, is so much better. But like, I don't know, I feel like just pacing wise, even in, you know, 5 chapters in, I feel like, you know, JoJoLian just kind of like, it drags stuff out a little bit, like not by much, because obviously like I think like chapter 6 of JoJoLian like was the final, you know, chapter of the soft and wet arc. So, you know, like by this point, like, you know, JoJoLian was only a little bit longer like doing things. Yeah, I just feel like the pacing is almost a direct statement by Araki to be like, hey, like, I get it, like I get the complaints about JoJoLian. I know like people said, like stuff went on for a bit too long, stuff dragged a bit here and there, the locations didn't really change that much. Like, one major complaint I will have about JoJoLian, and don't get me wrong, I did like JoJoLian, especially a lot more the second time, but like, one thing I will never understand about JoJoLian is like, you had Morio, like you had an alternate universe version of Morio, and despite that, how many fights in JoJoLian took place in the fucking Higashikata mansion? You know? Like, how much, like, we saw every nook and cranny of that house in multiple fights across multiple arcs, and like we barely saw Morio as a city. And then you get like the final act of JoJolian where like split into two with like Yasuho and Joshu versus Toru once again at the Higashikata mansion in like the fucking driveway and stuff like that I think really, you know, I think it ended up dragging JoJolian down a bit in terms of just like, man, you had a whole city and you just didn't really do anything with it. Like even like Morio in part 4, like that final fight like between Josuke and Kira like was spread across like multiple, you know, streets within Morio and different houses and stuff like that, and it used the location of Morio very well, whereas part 8 just really didn't. But yeah, like it's basically, I'm just saying, like it just seems like Araki is just very snappy. Like I personally can't believe we're already out this mansion. Like I thought, like I said, like I thought we were gonna at least spend another 2 chapters with Rohan, and then once we got to the end of that, I was like, oh, like Rohan's going to realise that there's another threat here with these cats, and I thought basically, you know, he was going to team up with Jodio and the others, and then they were going to all, you know, fight this cat stand or the string. But no, like 5 chapters in, and like these guys are already out of this house, they're already on the way back. Like obviously it's going to drag a little bit, well not drag, but it's going to carry on a bit. That's what I meant to say, not drag. It's going to carry on a bit with these cats, and like they're obviously not going to like, if they get back home to like their island, like back to Merrill, by chapter 6, like by the end of chapter 6, I'll like that will honestly, like I will start to get to like, is Araki like going too quick like territory, because like I'm enjoying the snappy pacing, like as much as I was, you know, expecting the stuff in the mansion with Rohan to last a couple another chapters, and as much as I was fine with that, like I would have no problem if, you know, we stayed like until like maybe like even chapter 10 until this was all wrapped up. Maybe that'll be a bit too long, but like, you know, maybe like chapter 7, chapter 8 is when we would like start to actually like conclude it all. In some ways, like I'm actually glad we're leaving the mansion. Like I've no problem with it, and like I said, I'm fine with it, and I was expecting it to go longer. But you know, I didn't want to spend ages here. Like I had to know, like I'm so used to like, well, not so much used to like, but I prefer a bit more snappier like location switching with JoJo. Like part 3 has a lot of it, like you're constantly going place to place, and it's great, and it's one of the best parts of part 3 is like them going to different locations. Part 7, my favorite JoJo part, like so many, just such a amazing variety of locations in part 7, and all these fights, like they're in cities, they're in the middle of the desert, they're in ravines, they're in, you know, they're in cabins in the middle of the woods, they're in the snowy mountains, like such a massive variety. And like, yeah, then you get to part 8 and like it's either mostly, you know, the Higashikata mansion, or it's like just, you know, a street or a hospital or something like that, where it's like, you know, so far we've had some good variety for part 9, but like, you know, I'm glad we're not spending too long here. Like I'm glad we're not spending too long in the mansion. I hope this isn't a constant thing. Like I said, if we get back to like the island by the end of the next chapter, like I'm kind of starting to think like maybe Araki's going a bit too quick, but we'll have to see, I guess. But yeah, like I said, just fantastic stuff, man. I'm just so enjoying this so much. This has been so fun to read and just, you know, and enjoy, and it's just such a step up from part 8. You know, not that I hate part 8. I do put it second to bottom, not because I think it's bad. It's just because I felt like it was probably more disappointing. I would say part 8's more disappointing than it is bad, but like part 8 has some amazing stuff that I do really appreciate. Like Jobin is like one of my favorite characters, for example, in the entirety of JoJo, and he comes from part 8. So I don't hate part 8 itself. Don't think I hate part 8. But yeah, I think so far definitely just in terms of like for me personally, like part 9 is doing a lot of things that, you know, after all my time reading JoJo and watching JoJo, it's kind of like I know what I like about the series and I know what I don't like. And so far, part 9 is doing a lot of the things that I like, and that's really cool. And like Jodio's just fantastic. Like he had some great stuff in this chapter. I absolutely loved the part where, you know, he just took control of the whole situation with Rohan, like tied him up, and then when Rohan was still cocky and like, oh, I know who you are, the police is still coming, as soon as Jodio brought out the rocks, Rohan just like his whole demeanor just switched, and all of a sudden Jodio's on top of the whole conversation and he's in control. Just great stuff. And like, I know I've said before, but like, man, I just really love Jodio. Like I'm such a big fan of this character, and like I can't wait to like spend the next, you know, I mean maybe 10 years, we'll have to find out, but like I just can't wait to spend the next few years just seeing more of this character, seeing him in more stuff, and like just stuff like that, man. Like it's so good. Like I'm so enjoying this all. But that does kind of lead me into a thing I do want to talk about a bit, where, you know, I said when this started that like I was gonna try and do these chapter reviews for as long as I could, and I was hoping to get to at least 12 chapters, at least get a year into into the JOJOLands before, I contemplated stopping it and maybe, focusing on other stuff if people went into it. But, I think, 5 chapters in, I'll leave it for a bit. I would like to get at least to 6 chapters, see how that goes, get at least halfway through, the first year of the JOJOLands. But I think after chapter 6 comes out and I do my review for it, I'm going to put up a poll on my channel page or the community page or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put up a poll there, and I'm basically just going to ask everyone, like, do you want me to still do these reviews? Like, are you enjoying them? Because yes, this stuff, all these reviews are getting like far less views than what I get for my normal stuff, which is mostly fighting game related. And I knew that would be the case. I knew this stuff was never going to do like extremely well because I have cemented myself more than anything at this point as a fighting game YouTube channel, as a Street Fighter YouTube channel, as a Tekken, Mortal Kombat, blah blah blah. So, and I'm fine with that, but like, I've enjoyed branching out with this stuff, but at the same time, it's like, sometimes I do think like, oh man, like, especially last month and the month before when I was really busy, I was like, man, like, it would just be easy if I was just enjoying, these chapters without having to review them. But in some ways I do enjoy them, like, I've enjoyed doing this one. So, I don't want to stop, but at the same time, I don't mind stopping if people are just like, nah, I really don't care, like, it's clogging up the channel, it's too different, I'm not interested, blah blah blah, I don't even know JoJo. So yeah, so like I said, I was going to do it for this chapter, but I'm going to wait till next month. Like, I at least want to get halfway through and be like, hey, we're at the halfway point. I was going to at least get to chapter 12 before I'm contemplating stopping, but basically, the views haven't been amazing. They've been okay, but like, I think the chapter 4 review took like a couple of weeks to even get like 100 views, which is, at this point in my channel, but isn't great. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm a view whore or anything like that, like all I want is views, but I think views and likes are the best way for me to gauge what people actually enjoy, like what people actually want from this channel, what they enjoy the most, what they want to see more of, what they want to see less of. So yeah, I'm at the point where I'm just kind of like, you know what, it's time to ask myself, like, is this what people actually want? Like, do they want to see more of this? Do they want to see less of this? But, like I said, I'll give it a month, I'll get at least halfway, and then I'll put up the poll, and then, just vote honestly. Like, if you want to see me do more of it, then absolutely go for it. If you'd rather I did other stuff, that's absolutely fine. Like, I'm not going to be bothered either way. I enjoy doing these, but I also, I think I would also enjoy just reading JoJolian fucking hell, if I was just reading the JoJoLands as a fan, without having to do these, but... like I said, I'll leave it up to you. I've got on for far too long. I didn't want to go on for, only 40 minutes. But yeah, I'm going to leave things here. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, with all the way, I'm not going to waffle on any longer. So yeah, I shall see you all later. Thank you. Goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.